I think we currently experience a new era of journalism. A decade ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, investigative journalism especially was something like a lone wolf phenomenon. It was one journalist sitting in a room not sharing anything because always he or she had to be aware of keeping the scoop for him or herself. And now we live in a world where actually every scandal crosses a border. There's no scandal, or not that many scandals anymore, that only affect one country. So it's only logical to team up across borders, to team up across media outlet boundaries. So I think instead of being lone wolves keeping the powerful and richest accountable, it's now a pack, a team holding them accountable, and this team is very powerful. My name is Frederik Obermaier. I'm an investigative reporter for the German daily Süddeutsche Zeitung. When my colleague Bastian Obermayer and me received the documents that later became known as the Panama Papers, we faced one big problem. It was documents coming from an anonymous source. We didn't know who was at the other end, so we couldn't be sure, is it a one person, is it a man, a woman, is it a group? And that contributed to us doing an even better fact-checking and cross-checking process than we do normally. So we tried to cross-check every detail in these documents with public information, with information from public registries of companies, with court documents, with newspaper articles, with public announcements of companies, and also with documents that we have received in the past years from other sources, to be sure that we can trust the documents. For me personally, before sharing the documents with the ICAJ, and by doing so with around about 400 other journalists, of course my colleague Bastian and me, we discussed it a lot. Can we trust this material? Because just imagining what it would mean if you share documents with 400 journalists and some of the best investigative journalists of the world, and then it turns out that those documents were fabricated, that it would have been the end of our career. So I had a lot of sleepless nights before we shared the documents, and even after, because of course this investigation affected my whole life. During those months, I only thought about the Panama Papers, consequences, dangers, threats. I mean, some of our colleagues received death threats, some of them had to leave the country for security reasons. And of course that's something that keeps you up. And if you then see the names of drug lords, criminals, sanctioned people, powerful people in those papers, you always question yourself, well, what could this mean? Could it affect my personal life? Could there be threats against me, against my family? But thanks God there was no threat against me, but there were threats about other journalists contributing and working on the Panama Papers. That's something we always should keep in mind, that journalists in these times face a lot of danger, and some of them actually risk their life to inform the public. The Paradise Papers, as they have been published only a little bit after 1.5 years after the Panama Papers, of course, were one new piece of the big puzzle, and they showed us especially how multinational corporations, how they dodge taxes, how they use every trick and every loophole they can find to not pay taxes, or to pay as less taxes as possible. And that showed again that they basically do not care about society, because we always have to be aware, if 1 million of taxes, of dollars or euros, is not paid in taxes, that is 1 million that is missing for building roads, for building hospitals, for running preschools. So it affects our everyday life, and we should be aware that it is companies that most of the people use or buy something from every day. It's like companies like Facebook, it's Starbucks, it's Nike. And the Paradise Papers raised the awareness for it, but of course, as it was another revelation after so many revelations before, it is hard to say which consequences are due to the Paradise Papers, which are due to the Panama Papers, or which are due to a combination of both. But I think it showed again that nobody who is hiding his or her money in offshore companies or in intransparent structures is safe anymore. Everybody out there should fear that there might, even in this moment when we speak, be a whistleblower who plugs in a USB stick or a hard drive and gets this documents out there to hand it over to authorities or to journalists. I think the work on leaks and files like the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers is a work from David against Goliath, because you always have to keep in mind that there's huge and very famous law firms, accountancy firms, and big companies sitting in the other hand that basically it took them months and years to set up very, very difficult structures, intransparent structures, with the only purpose that nobody understands them. And making those structures understandable is not easy, not even for a group of journalists. You need to speak with dozens of experts, and all of those experts they do not always have the same opinion on a certain document. Sometimes expert A understands one sentence and then refers like, well, the next thing I don't understand, you have to go to my colleague B. So it's a long work, it's a hard work, and it's, I must admit, not always that exciting. Sometimes it's boring paperwork, but you have to keep in mind what is in the end. You might uncover something that is important for the society and for the public to know. And I think that's the beauty of journalism. That's journalism at its best, keeping the rich and the powerful accountable.